The 2024 Astros have been nothing short of a failure. Coming off 7 straight ALCS appearances, the expectations are understandably high for this team. However, they have lost 19 of their first 28 games to start the 2024 season. The White Sox, Marlins, and Rockies are the only 3 teams with a worse start. You probably didn't think that we would be saying this a month into the season, but here we are. Why is this happening? How can you go from a dynasty like the Astros have had to a season like this? Do they even have a chance to make the playoffs anymore? Are they actually this bad? Today, I'm going to answer all of those questions and more. Enough waiting around, let's dive into this. On the surface, this offense looks good. 3rd in average, 5th in on-base, 6th in slugging, 7th in OPS, 2nd in walk-to-strikeout ratio, and 5th in WRC+. You think with numbers like this that they would be producing a good amount of runs, but you would be wrong. The Astros are actually in 17th out of all 30 teams when it comes to runs per game. This obviously is not ideal. How can an offense be top 10 in pretty much every major metric and be 17th in runs scored per game? They are literally 5th in weighted runs created plus, which is a stat designed to show how good a team is at creating runs, but they just aren't actually getting those results. The answer to this question is pretty simple, and that is situational hitting. Not all at-bats are created equally. An at-bat with the bases loaded and 2 outs in a tie game holds a lot more weight than an at-bat with the bases empty with an 8-run lead. There is a metric called clutch that takes the team's performance in high-leverage situations and compares that to how they do on average. If you have a negative clutch, that means the team performs worse than usual in high-leverage situations, and if it is positive, that means they perform better. The Astros, unsurprisingly, find themselves in last place with this metric. Now, of course, this stat doesn't really have much meaning on the surface to the average person, so let's go a little bit deeper. Let's compare the Astros' performance with runners in scoring position with their performance with nobody on base and with a runner on first. They are one of the best hitting teams with nobody on base or with a runner on first, but once they get runners in scoring position, all of a sudden, they turn into a bottom 3rd team in the league. Their TOPS+, which denotes how much worse they are in a certain split compared to their normal performance, is 84. That means that they are 16% worse with runners in scoring position than what they normally are. That is the 3rd worst mark in the entire league. They have the 3rd largest gap between their normal performance when compared to when they're runners in scoring position. One player who embodies this trend is Jose Altuve. Altuve has had a great season so far with a 1. OPS, but with runners in scoring position, his OPS is below 300. OPS is not batting average, this is OPS, below 300. His overall OPS plus so far is 191, which means he's 91% better than the average hitter when it comes to OPS. His OPS plus with runners in scoring position is all the way down at negative 20. This means he is 120% worse than the average hitter in that situation. That is quite the fall off. His TOPS plus is negative 39, meaning he is 139% worse than what he normally is with runners in scoring position. Yordan Alvarez, Jeremy Pena, and Yainer Diaz are also all in this club with Altuve. It is a team-wide issue. The Astros have one of the best offenses in the league, they just aren't doing it at the right time. Now, the question you may be asking, is this ever going to get better? Is this problem going to get fixed? The answer is, it should. In the long run, theoretically, we expect the runners in scoring position stats to converge with the averages for the team because, statistically, there's nothing really to suggest that these stats should be significantly different, especially not this different. I'm not saying that they're going to be exactly equal by the end of the year, but there is really no way that there is this much of a gap between these numbers over a larger sample. This means we should be seeing some positive regression here in these scenarios, and I think their run production will be on the rise in the near future. But scoring runs has not been this team's only problem. Preventing the runs has been the biggest issue with this team so far here in 2024. Taking a look at their pitching stats, they are in the bottom 10 in pretty much every single major metric. This sums up how this is their biggest issue this year, but we can get a better understanding of what is truly going wrong by going a little bit deeper. Let's split the stats between the starters and the relievers to try to narrow it down a little. The starting rotation has been dreadful, but there is some hope. I will get into that in a little. This staff has had a very hard time going deep into games. They are averaging less than 5 innings per start for a total of 137.2 innings pitched by the starters this year over the first 28 games. A big reason for this is the insane walk rate. When you're walking over 11% of the batters that you face, that is a huge problem for multiple reasons. One, you're giving up free base runners, and of course, those are not going to be outs, and a lot of them are going to score. Also, that means you are probably getting into a lot of deeper counts, 3-1, 3-2, and this is going to drive up the pitch count. This will lead to less innings pitched from the starters and ultimately put more pressure on the bullpen. Speaking of the bullpen, going into the year, this bullpen was supposed to be very reliable. Just take a look at this thing, especially look at the back end guys. Josh Hader, Ryan Presley, Brian Abreu. Those three guys are arguably 3 top 30 relievers in the entire sport, and they're all sitting here in the same bullpen. Look at these numbers that they have put up in their career so far. These are great. Having 3 reliable guys with career numbers like this surely will be a luxury for the manager and for the fans, knowing that if you got a lead late, these guys are going to lock it down. Even if one of them starts off slow, they can't all be bad, right? Right? No, wrong. They have all got off to bad starts in 2024. As you can see there, the numbers in 2024 are not quite what we are used to from these guys. However, this is probably not going to last much longer. Let's add in the FIPS for these players, and as you can see, they are much lower than the ERA for Presley and Hader. FIP is better at predicting future ERA than ERA itself. It's fielding independent pitching. It only takes into account what the pitchers can control, strikeouts, walks, home runs. It doesn't take into account all the defense. It's not a perfect stat, but it's better at predicting future ERA than ERA itself. This means most likely for Hader and Presley, things just aren't going their way right now, and I expect it to get better as the season goes on. I'm not really worried about the bullpen for the rest of the season, to be honest. There are good pitchers here. The underlying numbers for these guys are still good. They've been put under a lot of pressure here early on, as the starting rotation has basically been about as bad as it could have been. If we take a look at the guys who have been starting games, we can put them into 2 clear categories, good and bad. Ronel Blanco, Christian Javier, Framber Valdez, and Justin Verlander have all done well at preventing runs. But JP France, Hunter Brown, and Spencer Arrighetti have all been on the opposite end of the spectrum. Both of these groups will probably converge with each other, as the guys on the left aren't going to keep this pace up over a full year, and the guys on the right certainly won't be this bad over a full season. The performances have been very inconsistent from this staff, and I think that is something that can very well change as we move forward here. A big problem with this staff has been the injuries. Verlander and Framber just returned to the rotation, and Javier is now out with a neck injury and was placed on the 15-day IL. Let's take a look at the depth chart and see who they are working with here. Out of their top 10 arms they have, 4 of them are currently injured: Javier, McCullers, Garcia, and Urquidy. McCullers and Garcia will be out at least until the All-Star break, so they aren't returning anytime soon. Javier and Urquidy both have more minor injuries, but as of now, there has been no update recently on either of them. Their 2 top arms, Framber and JV, both recently returned from the IL and are now headlining that rotation. Having these 2 in the rotation full-time is going to help that walk issue a lot, since they both have great command. This will help other areas as these guys start to throw more innings, and the overall numbers for this team are going to look a lot better. The bullpen will also benefit from this, as they won't have to be overworked as much anymore. Hunter Brown and Spencer Arrighetti are both interesting young arms. I think both of these guys are in for some positive regression. Brown hasn't been generating the same swing and miss numbers that we saw from him last year. He put up a strikeout rate of 27% compared to a walk rate of just 8% last season. This year, though, through 17 innings, his strikeout rate is just 18%, and his walk rate is all the way up at 13%. His best pitch is his curveball that gets 7.3 inches of vertical break above average, which is near the top of the league. It plays really well off of his fastball that has great vertical movement, as you can see in this graphic. I still really like his stuff. After all, he's only thrown 17 innings so far this year, which is a very small sample, so I expect him to pick it up as we see that sample size increase. Arrighetti is a very interesting prospect as well. His fastball and sweeper work really well together. You can see here in this graphic that they essentially break opposite directions, which makes it very hard for the batter to make a decision. He only throws his fastball at 94 miles per hour, but it plays much harder because of his extension down the mound. He is averaging 7.3 feet of extension, which is in the 97th percentile. This means that the ball has to travel less distance, which obviously means that the batter has less time to react, and ultimately, the fastball is going to look much faster than 94 miles per hour. Combine that with his whippy right arm, I think his stuff is going to play very well at the major league level. The one concern with him is the walks. He tended to be a little wild in the minors, and you would expect that to continue here in the majors. I think he is much better than the 11 ERA he's put up so far here in the 2024 season, though, and his numbers are probably only going to get better. Between the injuries and the young guys improving, I think this pitching staff will only get better, and it's hard to get any worse than what it has been. Once this rotation gets into gear, I think that will alleviate a lot of pressure that is on the bullpen, and they will start to see a lot more success too. Along with the fact that Hader and Presley are going to be much better down the road, this pitching staff can only get better, and I think it is only going to get better going into the rest of this season. Now, after all of this, we have to answer the question, will they make the playoffs? If the Astros are going to make the postseason, it is going to take something that has never happened before. Right now, their record stands at 9-19 over the first 28 games. If we look back on all of the teams that made the playoffs since the wild card was implemented in 1995, none of them got off to as bad of a start as this. Two teams lost 18 of their first 28, the 2014 Pirates and the 2001 Athletics. The A's actually ended up winning 102 games, which is crazy. They go 18-10 and then end up winning 102 games. That means the Astros definitely could use some of that magic that the A's used in 2001, but you also have to remember that there are now 3 wildcard spots, and for most of this time span, there were only 2, so this does increase their chances slightly. The 2021 Braves and 2019 Nationals both lost 16 of their first 28 games and ended up winning the World Series, but no team has lost 19 of their first 28 and made the postseason. But also, there have been very few teams that have seen such a drop-off in their offensive production with runners in scoring position, so we may see something that has never happened before. I can almost guarantee you that the offense is going to start to score more runs as these numbers regress towards the mean. It would not surprise me if they end up in the top 5 in terms of run production by the end of the year. With how injured the pitching staff has been and the names that they have on their roster, it can really only go up. They are a better team than what they are right now, but the question is, have they dug themselves too deep of a hole? Right now, the AL West looks wide open. The Mariners currently hold the division with a record of 16-13, with a win-loss percentage of .552. Every other division has a team over 600 at the top. There are only 6.5 games back of the division lead, and if they get hot next month, that very well could be shrunk significantly. With the numbers I've looked at and with the players that they have on this team, it screams positive regression, and I think it's only a matter of time before it happens. Where do you think they will end up? Let me know. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed it. I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.